Hello, my name is Jon Rethmeier, and today I'm going to be talking about the functions and things we've learned so far now that we're halfway through the course. And just to start out, starting off with the earlier chapters, a lot of that was going over basic Excel functions as well as formatting. I know that formatting is super important in this class, and to be clean and simple and readable, no fancy colors or fonts or anything too distracting, just clean and simple. To start out, you can do this. Say we want this to be our title, and we need to make it center without having to create a whole thing that would just not connect all the cells. We would go over here to alignment and then go to center across selection to make it in the middle. And we can also change in between the cells instead of just centering it and it's like all across these cells, not individual. And then the number formatting as well. We can go over here and format it. I already formatted a dollar sign in that cell, but um, we can go over here. We can change the symbol. We can do no symbol. We can do the amount of decimal places. We can make it a percentage. Say it's a thousand, so it's like it's 100,000%, which is not correct, but we can do change. We can get rid of the comma. We can add decimal places. We can customize it. Um, the different formats if we have a specific thing we need to do. And yeah, that's basically it. And then for if we want to also border the cell, we can do this thick one. We can choose above. We can outline it as well. And then we can get rid of it. And then we can also fill the cell by adding the color. And as you see here, we filled the cell and it's back to just a regular thousand without the comma or dollar sign or anything. And then next, just some basic, super basic mathematical formulas. We use the plus sign between cells for addition, subtraction, multiplication. We use the star, and then we use the slant. We use the slant for division, and then we also use this upward arrow symbol for exponents as well. And then starting off with the first function, it's the geomean. We use this in Exhibit 1.9, and we use this to find the geometric growth of sales, and it basically calculates the root of the number, the square root, um, for the product inputs. And then whenever we insert this function, we need to subtract it by 1 because the 100% is the starting value. And regarding creating graphics, we can create charts using data. We use this in the profitability analysis in the first homework assignment. And it creates a really good visual in comparisons with other companies. And you can also choose certain chart types. If we go up here, like we follow my mouse, this is where we can select the different types of charts and customize the cells within them once you create it. And then we also use the sum function. We use this a lot when we're creating income statements, balance sheets, etc. It returns the total of the cells selected. Um, the first number is addressed first, then the second, and so on. And an example of this is you can subtract B7 from the sum of B8 through B10, B11, excuse me. And then next, I'm talking about copying and moving formulas. We use this a lot in our homework when for example, we had to take information from the balance sheet from two different years. We would go to the balance sheet and then take the information from the balance sheet and then put them onto the statement of cash flows. I think it's like the difference of accounts receivable, that sort of thing, accounts payable. And then moving on to data validation, we need to be able to switch denominators of functions, especially for ratios. For cash flows, we use this for the statement of cash flows. And we are going to go to the statement of cash flows to kind of demonstrate this topic. All right, here. So to start off, we first go, I'm going to move my face right here. We go to data and then data analysis. Oh, excuse me, data validation. And then we do list, and then we did sources one or two. So that is what we put in. So if we want a sales-based statement, would enter one. And then right here, if we wanted to do for beginning cash balance-based statement, we would click two. And then if we did any other number like three, four, zero, whatever, there's an error that pops up that only does one or two and that are allowed. Okay. And then as you can see here, when we hover over it, it says enter. It gives you instructions to enter for sales base and then etc. So if we click two, it should change to beginning cash. I'm not sure why it's not doing that. But for example, if we put in three, an error pops up and only one or two are allowed. So moving on to Z-score model. This is another thing we learned. It creates a quantitative model that places a company into one of two groups depending on a score. If the score is below the cutoff point, it is placed into group one, and otherwise it's placed in group two. And there is a gray area with Z-scores. So for example, a publicly traded company Z-score is Z equals 1.2 times X1, which is net working capital over total assets, plus 1.4 times uh, return on equity or retained earnings over total assets, and then plus 3.3 times EBIT divided by total assets, and then plus 0.6 times market value of all equity divided by book value of total liabilities. And then X5 is sales over total assets. And then, so if group one is below the C score of 1.81, bankruptcy is predicted within a year. In the gray area, if they're between 1.81 Z and 2.675, they're showing a little bit of financial distress. And then for group two, if they are above 6.6, 2.675, there's no financial distress predicted. So if statements, if logical test, value if true, value if false. We want to make sure that the value is good in okay or bad. The okay and function are pretty much identical because they also take into account the industry average and 2019 ratio. We're gonna look at one of these. Go to homework one. We use this in our ratio analysis. So just to kind of interpret this, so if B5 is greater than both C5 and D5, uh, it's good. If or B5 is greater than one of either C5 or D5, it's okay. And then if it's less than both of these, it's considered bad. So that's kind of the logic behind this if statement and how we were able to analyze whether these ratios were good, bad, or okay. Moving on to the next topic, the date function, we use this. We plugged in the original April date, and then we use this, and then we can drag it along to make sure it follows suit, like April, May, 1st, 2nd, um, June, July, etc. And then for the min and max function, Um, the second part of this equation will only be triggered if there's excess cash available, so they don't overpay the loan, as seen in the homework. And this function will help us figure out if they have a smaller loan balance, uh, or if they have excess cash. And for max functions, we calculate the maximum borrowing, which is what we're going to see in the scenario manager, um, which we did over here. So for the cash budget, we figure out our cumulative borrowing and with our minimal acceptable cash, For the functions, we use max D32 through H32 over here. And we then go to data, what if analysis, scenario manager, and then over here we have the expenditures. So if we see, if we kind of look into the data here, we say June, okay, so if we were to borrow the cash in June, and then so on and so forth, and each expenditure kind of goes over. So if we were to get the cash in $200,000 in July versus August versus September, and the scenario manager kind of helps solve this. So we can do that in J2. And then, yeah, we can look at the scenario. And so if we were to borrow in June, we would need the cash sooner. So we need to borrow more. But if we wait until August, the max borrowing we need is 13,800. Oop. And then going back to our notes, the other function that we've used is the average function, and this is used to calculate the average of certain metrics. It's shown as the homework as you do equal average and then the different cells. And then so far else in homework two, we've learned about discretionary finance needed, the amount needed to balance the balance sheet using the percentage of sales. It will increase long-term debt, which will increase interest expense, which will decrease your net income, which will decrease your retained earnings, which means you need more debt, and a lower net income creates a need for more discretionary finance needing. So this is what we learned as a circular reference. This was something we want to avoid when submitting Excel assignments and or submitting stuff to our boss. We can use the iteration to eliminate discretionary finance needs. So we can make up for the deficit as we'll see in the homework. And other forecasting models we learned are linear trend analysis with the trend forecast, regression analysis, and statistical significance, like when you compare sales and cost of goods sold, and then break even and leverage analysis, where we use goal seek to help find a result that you want, but the input value required isn't, but it's not the input value required to get the result, excuse me. We also learned the functions return function and then determine if a formula returns an error, and we use if error in parentheses. So this is what we've learned so far in the class, and thank you for watching the video.